Broadcasting live from Lothal. Good morning, Lothal. It's the Unofficial Star Wars Rebels podcast.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Good Morning Lothal, the Unofficial Star Wars Rebels podcast. I'm your host, Pete Salas, along with
Rolando Zamora.
How we doing, Robert?
Dude, it's been a minute.
Where have we been?
Good. Yeah, where have we been? That's what I'm sure. I'm wondering where you have been, and I'm sure all the listeners and viewers out there are wondering where have we been. I know we kind of said we were going to be out, but dude, I feel like I'm just like getting back into the rhythm of this thing. How do you feel, dude?
Me too. As soon as I walked out of my house right now to go record, I was telling my wife, I'm like, let me see if I remember how to do this. And she's like, oh, shut up. It's only been 2 weeks. But like, for real, I don't know about you, but I felt like I was like, God, a little rusty, like a little hesitant to come back behind the mic for some reason.
Yeah, so Pete messaged me last night, guys, and he was basically like, hey, for this episode, we're going to film tomorrow. He's like, I know we said we're going to do the next episode, but why don't we do kind of like a catch-up episode? And he was kind of like on the same wavelength as me, because I just feel like I've been so far removed from the rhythm of the podcast. A lot happened in Star Wars, don't get me wrong.
Yes.
It's just, yeah, I feel like I do need like a jump start. So to all the viewers and listeners out there, this is gonna be, I labeled it on the outline I wrote today as catching up, season 2 catching up.
Right.
So it's gonna be a very open discussion about Star Wars. Just to give you guys a forewarning, we will not be reviewing the latest episode of Rebels like we intended to, but that will be coming next week for certain. We'll get back on track.
Right, exactly. So yeah, like he said, this is a catch-up episode just to kind of like, reintroduce us and say hi once again. Welcome back, like I said. So Rolly, how was your trip? Let's start with that.
It was good. It was kind of like, it wasn't intended for my birthday. My birthday was September 15th. So it was kind of before that. I went to Vegas with some friends. It's kind of an annual trip that we take just to kind of blow off some steam. I don't think I've ever like taken like a true vacation on my own yet. Maybe it's because I don't have like an immediate family where I'm taking kids somewhere. So we kind of just go with the adult vacation. And Vegas is just so easy, right? You fly out there, you have a good time, you have fun. Right. What happens there stays there, so forth. For us, it's really all about like the food. Like we love the dining, and it's cool because at the shop we actually have some loyal customers that they were like, "Oh, you guys are going to Vegas? We love Vegas. You guys got to try this one place." And it was called the Top of the World restaurant at the Stratosphere, which is like the huge tower casino that they have over there.
Right. And
I thought it was going to end up being like one of those things where like it's all ambiance and the food's just okay, and it's kind of like going to be overpriced. Dude, I was like blown away. I was wrong. The food was amazing. The view is amazing. The prices are not crazy as what you would expect. So aside from, I think that was like my biggest takeaway from the trip, aside from the company. The company is always good. It's always fun, but we always try to do at least one new thing when we go. So that was really cool. And then on top of that, we actually flew into Fort Worth. We didn't fly directly back home on Sunday. And the idea was, my buddies, they're really big Tom Brady fans, like your son is. So they went to the Cowboys and Bucs opening game.
So did my son, FYI. He went.
He was there?
Yep, he was there.
Oh, awesome.
He got to go see Brady for the first time ever. Dominate the Cowboys, unfortunately.
Possibly the last time ever.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
But it was cool because they went for that, but the idea was our friends and loyal listeners, Tanya and Danny, they live in Fort Worth. So anytime we get to see them, it's always a great time. So my buddies went to the game. I got to hang out a little bit with them. And then we spent the next morning together, had breakfast. Waffle House always goes hard. We love that restaurant. And then we drove back. So
what's it called?
I feel like I'm
scattered. It's scattered and smothered or something is what they call when you put hash browns and like syrup and stuff on everything. I think that's how you order. You're supposed to order stuff like smothered and scattered or something like that. That means hash browns with like a fried egg and like syrup on top of it. Heart attack waiting to happen, but delicious, I'm sure.
Well, damn, I haven't even heard about that. So apparently, I've been doing Waffle House wrong all these years.
The only reason I know about it is because I listen to a lot of wrestling podcasts, and all those old timers are always praising Waffle House from back in the day, and that's how you order your pancakes scattered and smothered or something like that. I think I have that right.
Nice. And then I was also gonna say, since I was in Fort Worth, I got to go to the Holocron toy shop once again. So I picked up a few more figures. I almost forgot about that.
Badass.
Yes. Since I'm on such a big Hera trip, you know, going into this season 2, as we've been discussing, I didn't have the Hera and Kanan Black Series figures, so I ended up picking those up. So cool.
Is your Rebel team complete?
No, so I don't know, for whatever reason, man. I don't know if it's because I'm like in that career change or whatever, but I look at prices and I'm like, no, don't get all of them.
Okay.
But I probably should have, because they had the entire Rebel collection there except Sabine, which, if you remember, that was the figure I picked up last time that I was there. So I was like, Sabine's not there. Maybe that's a hint to just buy all of them. So, but of course, I walked out of there. I was like, no, I'm just going to take these two. I'll get Ezra and Zeb another time. The Zeb figure is super cool because it's oversized.
I was about to ask you, like, what does he look like? They try to like realistically design them or whatever. I'm sure he's not animated looking, right? He's not like cartoony.
I don't remember off the top of my head, but I feel like it was like a really like solid middle ground for the two, because in those animated like looks, sometimes they get too far away from it to where the toy looks goofy. And I feel like all of these on the Rebels figures, to be exact, I feel like they did a really good job on those. So otherwise I probably wouldn't have picked them up. Those types of things really do kind of put me off to certain types of collectibles. If it's animated, I love for it to be as animated as possible in the figurine. What about you, man? How was your trip?
It was very very relaxing, honestly. I spent 5 or 6 days up in the hill country, up by like the New Braunfels area with a nice lake and whatnot. It was very, very cool. One of my wife's clients was blessed us with lending us her lake house, basically, so we didn't have to pay for anything in that sense, which was awesome. And
dude, that sounds badass.
I woke up every morning. Now, we weren't exactly on the water, but the water was just a short distance away. But it was even better because we were in a wooded area, and every morning I got to wake up and feed some baby deer, and that was so relaxing, dude. Like I felt like a real, like, I don't know, like a pioneer dude or something like that. Like I just kind of throwing out corn, and deer would like come up and just eat at the porch area, and I would just sit on the porch like drinking coffee and whatnot. I'm like, I could live like this. Like, this is very relaxing. And there was Wi-Fi, so like that's all I needed, right?
It was that perfect middle ground of modern connection, but also you're walking around like a lumberjack.
Right, exactly. I am. I was like off the grid and living off the land and shit like that, but then I would go inside and binge a Netflix series. So it was pretty fun. And the reason we were there was for I was saying that it's a family reunion. One of my wife's family, extended family, that many like cousins she hadn't seen since they were like 3, and all of a sudden now here they are, like, in their 30s, and it was a long time. So it was fun. And I did feel a little hesitant going in, like I was going to be the odd man out, like I didn't obviously know anybody at all, but no, I embraced the situation, and I just kind of like was just myself. I didn't try to put on any airs or anything like that, or be someone I wasn't, and everyone seemed to really dig me. The thing that was the coolest was we played a game called All of Us or something like this. I think it's called All of Us, and what it is, it's a trivia game, and it's broken up into boomers, millennials, Gen X, and Gen Z cards. So it's best in a large group of people from various ages, which we had. And dude, I dominated like that whole thing. And I was so impressed with myself that at the same time, I'm not one to brag, obviously, but like in this case, I'm going to brag because I knew so many answers from every like era, every decade, or whatever you want to call it. And it was a really fun game. I got to pick it up, but unfortunately I don't have a group of that many people of various ages, so it might not have the same effect. But I was just so surprised that that was kind of like the icebreaker. And at that point, everyone was like, oh, they cheering me on and stuff like that. It became like a really cool situation for people that I just met hours before. But that was a really good icebreaker game. So that was really fun.
How did you know like the Gen Z stuff?
Because I have no idea, dude.
Is that because of your son, maybe?
It could be. It could be just peripherally. I'll listen to things. Now, granted, I didn't know like as much as my era, millennial or Gen X. Like those, obviously, I knew almost every question on there. Boomers, I did really well too because I'm kind of an old soul. Gen Z, I would at least get one out of the cards, out of the questions on the card. But it was more like there's a bit of a crossover between Gen X and Gen Z as far as things that were considered from what era. So there's stuff that on the Gen Z cards were being asked that technically in my mind were Gen X. So I don't know. It just
okay. But, yeah, dude, because I don't know about you, man, but like now that we have the shop and everything, I have a lot of like I text all these kids because they're looking for cards and such, right? And then they also in turn have cards that the shop's looking for. So like this week, for example, there's this one kid that he always has stuff. So I messaged him and I was like, hey, are you still interested in this card? And he's like, no. And I was like, well, I'm still interested in this one card that you have. And he responds with bet. And every single time he says that word, this is like the third time, I like have to pause and like reread the conversation because I read it as like, oh, I bet you want that card I have, but they're really saying you bet, like it's yours. Exactly. So, but I always do like a mental double take. I was like, wait, and I'm like, why do they talk like this? Why can't they just add that one single letter that's missing? So that it makes me feel old, and I'm like, I don't feel old, but when I talk to them, it's like, oh God, like
And what's funny is like you're technically the baby of our friend group because you're like 3 or 4 years older than us. So for you to feel old, that's crazy. But no, I see what you're saying because like texting my son who's 14, like I do get those kind of bet or bruh or that type of responses that they say these days. And I do have to take a double take also, so that's funny. So so had a great time doing that, and it was very relaxing. I did not want to come back to reality, and I think my body didn't either because on the drive home, on the day we were packing, like to get up and leave, which is another beautiful thing, is it wasn't like a hotel. We had to be out by 11, so we took that whole last day and we traveled at night to come back home. But I was just feeling so run down. Like I was just like, man, I don't know what's going on. I feel like I have the flu or whatever. But it was coming on and I felt it coming on, but I just, kept on packing the car and stuff like that. And we finally got on the road. It just took me forever. I had to take a nap in the middle of the day because I was just feeling really run down. Yeah. And on the drive home, I was like, oh man, something's going on. And that was it was not that long of a drive. It's only like 4 hours, but that was the longest 4 hours of my life to get back home because I was just like dying, like stomach, like just cold sweats and stuff like that. I'm like, I'm not okay. So once I got home, the next day I was supposed to go back to work. I couldn't go back to work, so I took another 2 days off to just kind of recuperate, and I finally started feeling better like around Friday. So I'm like on day 2 of feeling back to normal. So I was really glad.
Dude, it's funny that you say that because that happened to me in Vegas too. If you guys remember the last time we recorded, I was like really sick. By the way, when I listened to it, I was like, yeah, my voice sounded better. I wish I could just keep that same, sick voice without all the symptoms.
Right.
But that was right before we went to Vegas. Sure enough, like those few days before we left, that same Thursday of that week, I was perfectly fine. And then we get there and it starts coming back. And I remember the first night we were walking outside, dude, I don't even know how to explain it, but there was a sandstorm and we didn't even realize that there was one.
Really?
But basically it just looked like if it was the apocalypse. Like it was really dark. It was very like,
wow.
I can't say that it looked like sand, but basically the sky looked something fierce and ominous, and I think that's what brought it back. So the rest of the trip I was just kind of like with my congestion and all that again, but thankfully I'm okay. Unfortunately my radio voice is gone, but it is what it is.
That's right. It's all good.
Awesome. I'm already getting pumped now that we're talking. It's like it's getting me back into the podcast and you're hyping me up for it, so I'm ready.
Okay, so that's where your hosts have been. So let's try and get this back on track as far as our, layout that we usually do. Rolly, what's been happening this month in Star Wars?
All right, so let's start with some more recent news. And I believe this was today, if not yesterday. It was announced by Vanity Fair magazine that James Earl Jones has officially retired as the voice of Darth Vader. That's the bad news, but the good news that's attached to it, well, I mean, some might see it as like weird news. Ultimately, I think it's good news.
I found it fascinating.
Yeah. They're reporting that the actor, who's 91, by the way, which is insane, he has signed over the rights to his voice to filmmakers that are going to use new AI technology to basically preserve it. So he will remain as Vader going forward, which I've never thought of that as controversial, but I remember when I believe it was the making of The Mandalorian, when they were talking about the deep fake with Luke. They were talking about controversy with regards to that, and I think they started referencing Rogue One with Grand Moff Tarkin. I forget the actor's name, but I mean, nonetheless, if I was Darth Vader and I had that voice, be like, yes, here, take my voice and preserve it, because I want to be Darth Vader for the remainder of my afterlife as well.
Right. No, that's amazing. That is an incredible thing, because that guarantees that we will have Vader for many years to come, and the great James Earl Jones's voice will live on, for eternity. At this point, he might outlive us if Disney keeps on churning out Star Wars content.
Yes, seriously, which I hope for.
No, me too. So as kind of an audio nerd, I did look into this. And have you seen the documentary called Val, about Val Kilmer?
No.
Okay.
Can't say I have.
As Val Kilmer has throat cancer, and or is recovering from throat cancer. So basically, his entire voice box is gone. He talks like this, okay, which is unfortunate, because he was one of the best actors, of the 90s for sure.
Yes.
Mad respect to him, but his voice is gone basically, and it's a tragedy. However, in this documentary, Val Kilmer narrates his own documentary, which is kind of weird how that happened, and they did it two ways. And this was technology from, I don't know how old the documentary is. Probably at this point, they started making it a couple years ago. So let's just say 5 years ago was when this technology was created. They said at the very end, the way that they accomplished this was two ways. His son, who sounds very much like him, recorded part of it and was trying to mimic his dad's voice. But more impressive was they were working with a company out of California, which, if I'm not mistaken, it's that same company that you referenced here. And they have created a technology where they take audio clips and, video clips of, thankfully, Val Kilmer has over 20 movies to choose from. They import all of those clips, and they are able to digitally recreate his voice to where you type anything you want him to say, and he can say it in Val Kilmer's voice. So
that's awesome.
That's exactly how they're going to do this. And come to find out, that's exactly how they did Kenobi. So if you remember, we were talking about it. I was like, why does his voice sound so much better than it did in Rogue One? In Rogue One, he sounded old. He sounded like an older man, which he was at the time. And I thought, I knew Disney had some sort of a magic button that they were going to amplify his voice. But in reality, what they did was they were already practicing what they were working on, what just happened here, which is now they have years worth of James Earl Jones's voice. They import it into this computer. This computer chops it all up and phonetically can spell out anything that you want Darth Vader to say from now till the end of time, which is freaking amazing.
Yeah, for sure. So that's awesome. I didn't even know that anything. I guess I could have maybe presumed, based off of how good deepfake technology is now. I mean, it has to carry over to audio, but it's just awesome, because his voice he easily has the most prominent voice in the Star Wars universe, period, through the existence of this film franchise. So keeping him as Vader, very important, and I'm very happy that the technology nowadays is able to allow them to do that.
Right.
All right. So for fans that were not at Star Wars Celebration, we had 2 trailers released that I was excited for, both of them. One, first and foremost, The Mandalorian Season 3 teaser trailer, which is now confirmed to be releasing February 2023. What did you think of that, Pete?
I thought that was an awesome trailer, and I know that we both popped at the same time, which is when Bo-Katan, that just more of Bo-Katan in live action is definitely an awesome. That's never gonna not be badass.
Yeah, and I love how obviously at the end of Mandalorian Season 2, there's controversy, right? Because Bo-Katan is after the Darksaber,
right?
And come to find out, she never actually earned it. And I think we're going to learn more in this season as to how that probably also played into effect, how Mandalore continued to fall. I kind of have to give it some insight into the future Rebels episodes where Bo-Katan does end up with the Darksaber. That's the last we see of Bo-Katan when she does return in Rebels. And then when we see her again show up in the Mandalorian, she's seeking out this Darksaber, and Rebels fans at that point were like, well, what happened? How did she even lose it? And I think the fact that she did not win it through basically trial of combat, I think that also plays into what we're going to learn more in this season, because clearly she's not content that Din Djarin has the Darksaber now and she doesn't. She is the sister of the former Duchess Satine. She is, for all intents and purposes, the rightful heir to Mandalore, and she couldn't unite her people. And there was a specific scene in the trailer where they show, I forget the name of the city, but basically the capital city, Mandalore, and it's just in ruins. And it's awesome. I can't wait, because I guess I know that this season is very much going to be all about Mandalore. I loved seeing all the different Mandalorians in the trailer, and obviously I do also still want to see more of the continued relationship with Din Djarin and Grogu, now that Grogu is back with them, as per the detour we took in the Book of Boba Fett.
Right.
So looking forward to that. And I thought there was also a cool Easter egg in there too, because I don't know if it's the exact same character, but that droid technician, I don't know if he was a droid technician, but Babu Frick, that little tiny alien creature that is looking for the Sith language in C-3PO,
right?
In The Rise of Skywalker.
He stole that scene completely and stole our hearts.
Exactly. So I think it's kind of cool that if that is him, that they're inserting him into the Mandoverse, because if anybody comes close to competing with Grogu on the cuteness scale, it's probably Babu. So it'd be cool to see some interaction there, kind of the same way we saw interaction between R2-D2 and Grogu at the end of Season 2 of Mandalorian. Nonetheless, my biggest takeaway from that entire trailer was I feel like I don't know anything, even at the end of it.
Right.
So I love just being left to surprise. I don't like being able to dissect plot in the trailer, not that much anyways. And I feel like the trailer was the perfect, appropriate teaser trailer for this upcoming season.
I agree.
And again, just to reiterate, that's going to be February 2023. So this year's going by fast. 2023 is not that far around the corner, so it'll be here sooner than we realize. And okay, now the next one. This is the one that I am excited for beyond anything that was released at Celebration, even more so than the Ahsoka live action series. And this is Tales of the Jedi. So the trailer dropped for that one. That it's an animated series with the exact same animation used in Clone Wars and Bad Batch, which means it's top-notch animation.
Yep.
That one's going to be dropping October 26th. And I know we spoke about this several episodes back during our Celebration conversation, but just to remind everybody, this is actually 6 episodes. 3 episodes are dedicated to Ahsoka, and 3 episodes are dedicated to Count Dooku. And for as big of an Ahsoka fan as I am, you guys, I'm really looking forward to the Count Dooku sequence. Yeah, because I just feel like that character, we didn't get enough of him, his backstory, or
there's
really
so
like
mystery.
Yes, there's so much mystery to his true purpose as to, why he was put in the role he was in Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith. And in the trailer for Tales of the Jedi, we're gonna be it's going to be a younger Count Dooku when he was actually a Jedi.
Mm-hmm.
And what I'm really intrigued to see, and I'm excited to find out more, is like, clearly he was Yoda's Padawan. So I want to know, like, at what point does he start like following his own path with it, which ends up leading him to the dark side. But I also want to know the relationship he has with Qui-Gon, because Qui-Gon is his Padawan. And when we see Qui-Gon in The Phantom Menace, he is not your stereotypical Jedi. He also has his own thoughts as to what's done right and what's done wrong as far as the Jedi Council is concerned. So I kind of get the feeling that some of that ideology is taken from his former master. I don't know. Obviously, it doesn't lead him down a dark path, but I want to know like more about that relationship.
Right.
And then also in that Dooku trailer, they show a snippet of him battling Yaddle, which is like the female version of Yoda that sits on the Jedi Council. And we don't see her after the Phantom Menace. So I think we're going to get some insight as to why she leaves the Order I believe she leaves the Order. So I hope we get some more questions answered on that.
Absolutely. No, that was exactly what I took away from it. Also, was there's so much mystery and backstory to Count Dooku, which one of the coolest characters of the prequel trilogies, and just the fact that we're going to get to see, you know, what it is. It's kind of I liken it to, there's so much emphasis put into Anakin's descent to the dark side that, you know, we know all of that story back and forth, but to see it happen for another prominent Sith Lord, that's got me hyped big time. So I'm very much looking forward to it.
And then just to kind of touch on the Ahsoka arc, which, don't get me wrong, guys, I'm pumped for it because there's so much stuff happening in there I am familiar with, and I can't wait to see it on screen for the first time. The first episode, going back to the cuteness scale, you know, times 1,000. We see baby Ahsoka. I think she does compete with Grogu on that scale. Just in this trailer, I think it's going to be awesome. But a really cool scene where she's connecting with the creature as like a toddler, and it reminds me of the way Ezra connects to the creatures in Rebels. So I want to see that. Basically, this is before Ahsoka is picked up by the Jedi, where she goes to learn and train. And then it looks like the second episode from that arc is going to be her further training with Anakin. This is kind of like in between, I would say, seasons 2 and 3 of Clone Wars. He's training her to defend herself more, and that seems really cool because they show her kind of doing defensive training that you also see in the Clone Wars. So more of that poetry where you watch them side by side, and it's the exact same sequencing that she does end up using later to defend herself during Order 66. The biggest thing I can't wait to see about the Ahsoka arc is definitely going to be the last episode, where it's a throwback to the Ahsoka novel by E.K. Johnston, and this is where Ahsoka acquires her white kyber crystals that she purifies from an Inquisitor that she ends up defeating without any saber. So to see that on screen after reading that from the novel, it's just, I'm really excited for that. Obviously, you guys know how big of a fan I am. So what were your takeaways as far as the Ahsoka aspect from the trailer, Pete?
I was just excited for you, honestly, when I was watching it. When I was watching it, I was like, yep, this has definitely got Rolly's nerd senses raging. So I was very excited. No, everything looks great from top to bottom. But was there another aspect to besides Ahsoka and Count Dooku? Was there more to it as far as the series? Anyone else featured or anything like that?
No, specifically for this series, and I think the title for it, Tales of the Jedi, I think it's in like foreshadowing as to what we're going to get in the future for animated Star Wars, and I have a strong feeling that this is just the beginning of more to come. These are going to be the short stories that Disney's just going to decide, hey, let's make more content for such and such character or whatever, and we're going to get more individual tales with, of course, amazing animation. I was talking to my friends about this. If you guys remember, I was so high on that book Dark Disciple, which were lost Clone Wars episodes that were never produced after Clone Wars moved from Cartoon Network to Disney.
Yeah,
I think I was telling them that, you know, based off of what we're going to see off of these Tales of the Jedi shorts, that I have a feeling Disney's just going to do spot releases of stories. And I think that's going to be one. They're going to say, hey, you know what? Dark Disciple's so well received by the fans. I'm sure that there is some already blueprint that existed for the episode that just wasn't released. They'll go ahead and release that. And it's going to be like a 4-episode short tale like this one, but for Asajj Ventress, obviously.
Right.
But yeah, that title, Tales of the Jedi, like talking about Dooku and Ahsoka here, but there's no reason why we can't have future episodes of more Jedi as well as Sith. So that would be really awesome.
Yeah, I'd love to see a Mace Windu origin story too, something like that.
Yeah, I want to know why Mace Windu's such a hard ass. So that would be what I'd be interested to know.
And do you know if Dave Filoni's involved in this? Is he?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Dave Filoni is 100% involved with all animated aspects of the Star Wars universe. So you know it's going to be good. He has such a firm grip and understanding of the animated aspect of Star Wars, which I hope, honestly, like I'm loving Andor, which we'll get into, but I just feel like you can do so much and whatever you want in the animated universe for Star Wars. You can, it's like obviously not having to pay for these, immaculate setups and such creates more opportunity for story, and you can just focus on story, I guess. I know I'm kind of scattered brain on here. I'm just getting excited anytime we talk about animated Star Wars, but I hope that that's kind of like the direction they continue to go, not to where they're pushing the main story with it, but doing as much as they can through the animated aspect. I think it's amazing. I know the fans love it. That's why we're getting these Tales of the Jedi. It's just people want more animated Star Wars, and I hope that they never lose sight of that. And I know with Dave Filoni, taking on a bigger and bigger role, it seems every single year with Disney and Star Wars, I don't think that's something he'll ever let go. So
excellent.
And last bit of news this week, Star Wars, obviously Andor still. I'm going to keep that a bit separate because I will talk on it. But a bit of sad news, unfortunately. The Bad Batch Season 2 has now been moved to January 2023. I know it was initially slated to come. I believe it was supposed to come out this month. It was supposed to be a fall release. But I guess with everything that is out currently, specifically Andor, I guess they just ultimately decided, let's move it a better position. I don't know the reason, but that was something I was looking forward to seeing. I
guess maybe they didn't
like I said earlier,
maybe they didn't want 2 animated series coming out around the same time, with the Tales of the Jedi also coming out.
Yeah, that's also a possibility. So I guess I'll just be patient, like with everything else in life, right?
Yep.
So this week we also need to cover a smorgasbord of birthdays that we missed over the past 3 weeks, and some big ones at that.
Yes, sir.
So, let's get into that. First and foremost, already fumbling right out of the gate. Werner Herzog, September 5th. He played the client in The Mandalorian. I remember when he came out, it was kind of cool because that was the very first episode of The Mandalorian. He was the first indication that the Imperials still survived.
Right. So
he ends up being the one that is looking for Grogu.
Right, and it was such an interesting casting choice too, because Werner Herzog is known for being a pretty prolific director. So he doesn't act very often. He's been in a couple things, but when he does come out in something, it's got to be important. So it was pretty cool casting. I very much enjoyed seeing him in that first episode.
And I always appreciate you giving more detail on these other actors and directors and such, because it adds a lot to it. For me, it's just like, oh, this is such and such person in Star Wars.
Yeah, no, you're welcome.
And if I butcher any of these names and please correct me, because I feel like I'm going to butcher this next one here. Keon Young, September 6th. He voices our Commander Sato in Star Wars Rebels, who we have just barely been introduced to in this season 2. Big name that's next on the list, Taylor Gray, September 7th. You guys know him as Ezra Bridger in Star Wars Rebels. So happy birthday to him. Every time we read a Rebels name on this list, I'm like, it's a big deal for me because this is a Rebels podcast.
Right. The main cast, obviously. We got to show some prominence.
All right, I know I'm going to butcher this next one, but I didn't want to leave him out. Jay Lagia.
I'm going to say Lagai.
Okay, September 10th.
It's got to be Polynesian or something like that.
Yeah, for sure. He plays Captain Typho in Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith. He's the personal, like, I guess, security head for Padme and Senator Amidala. Senator Amidala. Yeah, he kind of, I guess, he replaces the original Captain Panaka from Phantom Menace, who, if I'm not mistaken, ends up becoming a separatist. I remember reading that in one of my books. So, excuse me. Next on the list, we have Ian Abercrombie. He voices Emperor Palpatine in Clone Wars. His birthday was September 11th. And that one struck me as kind of different. I had to do a bit of research on that one because I did remember, I think you asked me one time, is it Ian McDiarmid that voices him in the cartoon? And I wasn't sure. So when I looked it up, apparently Emperor Palpatine is also voiced after this gentleman, Ian Abercrombie. He's also voiced by Tim Curry. Did you know that?
I did know that he voiced him, I think, the first time. And then I guess it was at the time that Tim Curry, right before his stroke or whatnot, and he couldn't come back. So it seems like they got this gentleman, Ian Abercrombie, and then even Ian McDiarmid came in and did a couple of them too. That's what as far as my research goes, is he didn't do consistently. The most consistently was this gentleman, Ian Abercrombie.
Yeah, I think I also read that Sam Witwer, who voices Darth Maul famously, also did a very spot-on Emperor Palpatine voice, and I think he did it for some type of feature. I don't know if he did episodes, but somewhere where he's voiced, Sam Witwer actually voiced Emperor Palpatine also. So it's pretty cool that there was a group of people that provided that voice, because if you asked me, it was just, I would have just presumed it was Ian McDiarmid the entire time. So props to the voice actors, like we always give them. That's Absolutely. A prime example of that. Next on the list, we have Greg Baldwin, September 13th. He voices Terrace Nube in Clone Wars. And you guys remember we talked about this character recently because that is one of the Jedi that we find captured in Kenobi, the Kenobi series. And if you guys remember him from the Clone Wars, he's the Jedi Master that helped Ahsoka find her lost saber. Right. Just kind of like a little bit of a goofy arc, but it was a super cool one nonetheless, I thought. Next on the list, we have Ben Schwartz.
Yeah.
Same birthday as me, September 15th.
There you go.
I wish it was a cooler one. I was like, oh, it'd be cool. He's got to be good, right? He's on my birthday, right?
No, he's awesome, cool. Dude. He's awesome. He's Jean-Ralphio from Parks and Recreation, man. How could you not love Ben Schwartz? He's awesome.
So he actually voices, believe it or not, BB-8 from The Force Awakens.
Right.
I think there's a bit more to it than that. I'm always kind of like thrown off when they're like, oh, such and such famous person is the voice of a droid.
Right.
Like when Taika Waititi was the voice for IG-11 in The Mandalorian. I want to know like how, why, to what extent.
No, and I think famously BB-8 was voiced by a couple of comedians. Him being one of them, and I think the other person is Bill Hader, also voices BB-8.
Yes, yeah, so. I was reading that, so that's pretty cool. Next on the list, September 18th, John Powell. He is the composer for Solo. I didn't know that actually. Solo's not like a soundtrack that I've gone back and listened to, but I think I'm gonna probably explore that now, knowing that it's another composer that did that film. Another big one next on the list, Ashley Eckstein, September 22nd, and obviously you guys know her, I'm sure 100% because of me as Ahsoka Tano. In all animated aspects of the Star Wars universe. Next on the list, we have Donald Glover, September 25th. He plays Lando Calrissian in Solo, which I thought was a perfect casting for definitely. Young Lando. Such a cool, I love that movie, period. So if you guys don't like it, I don't know what you saw. Go back and rewatch it. And last but certainly not least, same September 25th, Mark Hamill, who plays none other than Luke Skywalker.
Absolutely. Wow. Yeah. This was a packed month, man. This is exactly this reasoning alone, and plus what happened at D23 was, so much happened the weeks we decided to take off. So like there was a lot of important birthdays. There was a lot of important news that came out. So it was a no-brainer to do one of these recap episodes. So happy birthday to everyone, all of our Star Wars family, extended family for the month of September. We appreciate everything that you've done to help pad this universe that we all love.
Yeah, and for the ones that continue to pad it, I know there's just still so much involvement with a lot of these actors going forward in the Star Wars universe, even to like the most minor extents, even if they're just promoting, being asked about current Star Wars that they're not involved with. It's always a pleasant treat to listen to what they have to say. So again, happy birthday to all these Star Wars stars out there. All right, let's talk about Andor, because Andor dropped this past week. I'm always put on the spotlight for not doing my homework, but apparently I did my homework this week.
Yeah.
You know, I talked about waiting for Andor for forever, and guess who watched it when it came out, and guess who didn't watch it?
Yeah, when Rolly sent me the outline, I was like, okay, good, okay, birthdays, yeah, and I'm like, oh, damn it, I didn't watch Andor. Sorry, everybody, I have not watched Andor, so we will give a more in-depth talk about it next week. But preliminary talks, we cannot not mention it because it was a huge development in the Star Wars universe, because not one, not two, but 3 episodes dropped at the same time, which was pretty cool.
Yeah, so it's before I even get into it, I wrote out this outline, wrote specific questions for Pete, and then because there's so much new stuff in Andor, I wrote down key terms because they're not engraved in my brain yet. So we're throwing that all out the window, and I'm just going to give you guys a brief rundown of what I thought of it, and then next week we'll talk about it a bit more.
Yes.
Number one, shout out to Sky Talkers podcast. I listen to them regularly, and they had already given a breakdown of what to expect for Andor, specifically why 3 episodes were being released at once, and they straight out came out and said, hey, we saw it. The 3rd episode is dropping, or all 3 are dropping because it's one arc. So basically Andor, as I understand it, is going to be 3 episode arcs. And sure enough, you watch the first episode of this series, it's so different. This is the first like non-Star Warsy like show movie I've ever seen in the Star Wars universe, and I don't say that in a bad way. I say it in an awesome way, because this very much is telling me like Tony Gilroy was given creative freedom on this, kind of to the same extent that Rian Johnson was given for The Last Jedi, which I love. Right. The best way I can describe this show is if you're watching Blade Runner happening in the Star Wars universe, which I'm a big fan of both movies, the original and Blade Runner 2049. If you guys seen Blade Runner 2049, you're gonna in the first 5 minutes of the show, that's how the show feels. It's just very dark, it's very adult. It's my friend said it has a very Noir theme. I believe that's how you pronounce that word.
Noir.
Yeah. And it's just so dark. And if you guys remember in Rogue One, when we're first introduced to Cassian Andor, within like the first 2 minutes of him on screen, the guy ends up shooting a rebel informant in cold blood, because he was just doing what he had to do for the rebel cause. And without giving any like spoilers away, you just see that type of same Andor right off the bat in this show, and it just creates a snowball effect of things that are now happening where Andor has to basically get up and leave. And in the process of that, he does kind of put people that he's grown close to in danger. His past is revealed. We start learning about Andor, what we perceive to know. It's not true. He has a whole different backstory that we're going to continue to learn throughout these 2 seasons of Andor. And we start seeing kind of also how the Empire is not at large in these first 3 episodes. So there's actually a corporation called Preox Morlana, which is kind of like a mining corporation, and they kind of like govern this planet called Morlana 1. And it's almost like the Empire. It's almost like a middleman, like between the Empire and the free people.
Okay.
So, man, how do I even describe this? See, this is how different the show is, guys. It's just it seems like it's like an early framework with like, okay, how did the Empire contract other people to do like their dirty work for them, because that's kind of like how it seems in this. But in the process of Andor like having to like uproot his life, if you guys remember from the trailer, I forget the name of the actor, very, very famous, Skarsgård. That's his last name.
Stellan. That's Bill Skarsgård, his father. It's like there's 3 generations of him or whatever. But yes, this.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so he plays this rebel recruiter called Lothal, and he is put into contact with Andor because one of Andor's friends in the series, her name's Bix Kayleen, she sends this character Lothal to go recruit Andor because Andor is basically already exhibiting the characteristics of what a great rebel informant / spy would be. And just that premise alone, like of Cassian, that this is going to be a very auto-oriented theme, but there's just so much themes going on that you guys just need to watch it, and you're gonna be kind of the same as me, like, what am I watching? Like, this is not Star Wars, but I like it. I think it introduces, again, I don't think that all Star Wars product has to be the same. I think that there
lightsabers and the Force and all that stuff does not always.
Yeah, and absolutely. And the other crazy thing about this show is, like, none of the names are gonna stick at first. We don't start off on Tatooine.
Right.
These planets that are here, it's Kenari, Ferrix, and Molana 1. Never heard of them. Mm-hmm. And then all these characters, with the exception of the characters that we know in the trailer that we've seen, which is Cassian, Mon Mothma, and Saw Gerrera, of course. None of these other characters I've ever heard of. I don't think that there's going to be any ties to it. I know that the director and creator of Andor, Tony Gilroy, has specifically kind of already set guidelines for, hey, don't expect things to be the way you think they're going to be in this show. And just kind of knowing that, I'm excited, because give me more Star Wars that does not directly like have anything to do with the Skywalkers and all that. But give us that. And I think Rogue One did an amazing job of that. And I think that this show is going to even over deliver beyond what Rogue One gave us.
Excellent. Then I look forward to watching it between now and the next time we record.
And if for whatever reason you guys, listeners and viewers out there, if you were kind of like on the fence of Andor, like, drop in the comments and let's get the discussion going on that too. I know this is a Rebels podcast, but guess what? Rogue One ties to Rebels more so than any of the other, initial films. Right. So there's no reason why we shouldn't be able to talk about both of them. All right. Okay. So that kind of wraps up everything that we've missed in Star Wars this week. Like we mentioned in the beginning, we're not going to review a Rebels episode this week. It's going to come back with full force next week. Just kind of want to briefly recap where we're at in season 2. Mm-hmm. If you guys remember, we started with the Siege of Lothal. We saw the death of Minister Tua, who was a pretty prominent Imperial figure in the first season. With that death, Vader kind of took the reins. Now that he knows that his apprentice survived, he wants to seek her out as a means to quash this rebel uprising that's happening. So that was a really cool start to season 2 with a couple episodes, and then we had some really cool follow-up episodes to that where we got Captain Rex back with the Lost Commanders and Relics of the Old Republic arc. And then, of course, following that, we were introduced to 2 brand new Inquisitors, the 7th sister and the 5th brother. So that was the episode Always 2 There Are, if you guys remember correctly.
Yes.
And then we were reintroduced to one of our favorite characters from the Clone Wars, Hondo Ohnaka in Brothers of the Broken Horn. So that was a really fun episode to do. That was kind of one that I was really excited to rewatch.
Right.
And then last but certainly not least, if you guys remember the last episode called Wings of the Master, Hera, it was a Hera episode, and Hera from that ends up becoming the leader of the Phoenix Squadron as Phoenix leader. So any thoughts on where we're at so far on Rebels, Pete?
Well, I mean, that's pretty much a great recap to start off this season. It reintroduces us to some old favorites, and it's prolonging the main storyline, which is this little band of rebels / family they keep growing in power, growing in numbers, and going up the ranks as far as where their placement in this whole alliance that is forming. So it's really, I think we're headed for some really cool episodes to round out the rest of the season coming up. I really enjoyed them so far, so I look forward to the ones coming up.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say season 2 so far, like it's really come out with the bang. Season 1 I really loved after we rewatched and dissected it, but season 2 does still remain one of my favorites. Not because just of Ahsoka, but we start getting more prominent development in the characters. the Hera episode by far has been my favorite. Now that we've rewatched it, I've just like grown so fond of that character. I think she's probably like, I think I mentioned last time, her and Kanan are my 1 and 2 on that whole Ghost crew. So that last episode was great, and I can't wait to see more of her, not only in Rebels but in the upcoming live action Ahsoka series. So
yes, sir. So with that kind of wraps up everything that we wanted to catch up with in these last few weeks that we've been off the air. But we are back, and this seems like a good time to remind everyone to please like, share, subscribe, and rate us. Please help out this show grow in numbers, grow in listeners and whatnot, and help just grow it in general. Anything you can do to help share, spread the word to any Star Wars fans that you have out there. And any closing comments, Rolly?
Yeah, I got a closing comment. Catch up on Andor, Pete, so we can talk about it next week.
What a jerk. Okay, I will do that. And anyone out there, if you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, anything, our DMs are open. Please slide on into them and let us know, get the discussion started, let us know anything that we can do, any questions, anything. We are here to listen. We're here to just kind of spread the word and the love of Star Wars together. So the next episode will be, we will get back on track. Like you said, we'll be talking about Star Wars Rebels Season 2, Episode 8, and it's called Blood Sisters. So very intriguing. As usual, love the titles of these episodes. So if there's nothing else, then we will see you next week, back on track. And this has been your host, Pete Salas, along with
Rolando Zamora,
saying, may the Force be with you always. Goodbye from Lothal.